Hi everyone, I am Katie from Hackster. Welcome to Hacking Menopause webinar with AARP Innovation Labs. Carrie Kyler and Rick Robinson from AARP are here along with Sheila Collins, and they're going to be sharing some information about menopause and the challenge they are hosting on Hackster to encourage innovation around FemTech. So Carrie is going to be leading this, and Carrie is the Senior Innovation Catalyst at AARP Innovation Labs. She's a Fortune 500 trained consumer insights expert, design thinker, former network television executive, and consumer evangelist. She's worked on brands like Tide, CoverGirl, AARP, and the Discovery Channel, and her passion is identifying opportunities and bringing new solutions to delight customers. So as a senior innovation catalyst for AARP Innovation Labs, she's responsible for developing new breakthrough products to improve the quality of life. She's been a regular guest speaker at Johns Hopkins, Georgetown, and George Washington Universities, and she dabbles in chocolate making on the side. Sheila Collins is here. She's going to be helping answer some questions, so you will see her pop in and answer some of your questions as you have those. She's also a Senior Innovation Catalyst at AARP Innovation. And we also have Rick Robinson, who's the VP of Product Development at AARP Innovation Lab, so he'll be jumping on as well during the presentation. So kind of just a little bit of how this works. If you've never attended a webinar at Hackster, the first 45 minutes of this will be a presentation. So in this, you're going to learn a little bit more about Menopause, AARP Innovation Labs, and the contest they're hosting on Hackster. You'll get an overview of some of the current female technology or FemTech out there, and hopefully you'll get some good inspiration for your projects and everything as you get going. If you haven't heard about the contest and you're coming here without having heard about it, this is a great opportunity to get started. We'll share some information about that. We'll share the link to get started on the chat in a second, and you'll get to have some really cool ideas to get you started. So if you have questions during the presentation, you should see at the bottom of your screen, there's a little Q&A button. So you can click on that and ask your question directly there. We'll have about 15 minutes at the end of the presentation where Carrie, Rick, and Sheila will help answer your questions. And then if you have any questions throughout the presentation, definitely ask them there. We will also be checking the chat, but it's easier to miss stuff there, so we might not get that. The recording should be happening. It might take a little bit longer just because of processing, because a lot of people are using video right now. So it might be a little bit longer, but we should have that recording for you. So if you do have to duck out early or you get for all of it, we should have that for you in a little while, hopefully not longer than a couple of days. But without further ado, I think we're going to get started. So I'm going to let Rick, I believe, take over and get started.
Great. Thank you. And thank you everybody for jumping on today. Really appreciate the attention and appreciate what you're going to create along with us. Just to give you a very quick overview, AARP Innovation Labs does a number of things. We work to develop original products that kind of fall into the categories of health, self, and wealth. We run pitch competitions around the country where we find startups that we can either help fund or work with on new product solutions. And of course, we work with Hackster like we have in the past and now to try to find original, unique solutions to unmet needs and problems of our audience. And menopause is one that has kind of been swept under the rug for a number of years, and we're bringing it out and trying to address it head on with original, unique, interesting solutions to the symptoms of menopause. What we're not trying to do here is come up with medical solutions, if you will, but instead things that can treat the symptoms that we'll go into today in the presentation. So I appreciate everybody being here. I won't blather on anymore. I'll hand it over to Carrie.
Thanks, Rick. So I want to thank everybody for coming today as well. As you can see, I hope everybody's doing okay. We're all practicing our social distancing today. Rick and Sheila and I were all supposed to be in the office, so we are keeping our distance and hope everybody out there is very healthy. We are thrilled that you all are here today and are listening to this presentation. And what we really wanted to do is start out, before we go into more detail about the challenge, which if you've gone to the Hackster site, you can see that we are giving about $16,000 away in prizes. There are 3 main prizes, 10 runners up, and there's also potentially the opportunity to work with us to develop out your idea. And also, depending on what happens, of course, the opportunity to attend a health conference with us to demonstrate that idea. But what we wanted to do before we jumped into all of that is to talk a little bit about why we're doing this, why we have decided that menopause is an area that we want to address. And we started digging into this. Clearly as AARP, this is something that definitely hits not only our main target, but also younger. Menopause typically hits somewhere around age 40, women begin to start to experience the symptoms. And we're fond of saying that menopause affects half of the population, and yet really it kind of affects everybody. Because if you have a woman in your life, you have a wife, a mother, a partner, a sister, or a coworker, ultimately they are going to go through menopause. So this is a pretty large issue that affects a significant portion of the population. And yet women tend to feel totally unprepared for this. It's been just amazing to me. Sheila and I and the rest of our team have spent a lot of time talking to women about this, and they feel just utterly smacked in the head by this. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that this is kind of one of the last great taboos. So we know that many taboos have been broken over the past several decades, things like ED, adult incontinence, but for some reason, women are not comfortable necessarily discussing menopause, other than maybe very superficially. And indeed, their mothers aren't even talking to them about it. So for the women that are listening in, we all remember that movie that we saw in grade school that it told us about puberty, and maybe the guys got some of those as well. We don't get anything on the back end. And it's fascinating to us because women will be in menopause for 30 to 40 years, really, in total. You are in your post-menopausal years from about age 50 through the end of your life, which is actually as long or longer than you are in your fertile years. And the other thing that's been so interesting to us is that it's on here on the screen, 84% of women report that the symptoms have interfered with their lives, and yet not talking about it. And at the end of the day, there are very few products that are really designed to help them through. So we recognize there was a large opportunity for us. And these are just some of the quotes that we've picked up from women as we've gone through our research. I mean, some of these are crazy. I wonder what fresh new hell will greet me tomorrow, or I felt like a bug hitting a windshield. So clearly they know a little bit about it, but many, many women do not recognize the magnitude of what menopause can do to you. So I know even in popular media, sometimes there are jokes about things like hot flashes or crankiness, and certainly those are key symptoms of menopause, and some of the biggest symptoms. About 75% of women experience what they call the vasomotor symptoms. Those are the things like hot flashes and night sweats. But there are other big symptoms that women can have as well, things like intolerable insomnia, this rage and moodiness that is completely uncontrollable. Sex can become painful. What we like to call crime scene level bleeding. I won't go into any more detail about that. And also this memory fog problem that people will have. You lose words, things don't come as quickly. And it's very frustrating, particularly when you think about the fact that, it hits you without you being fully prepared for it, and everything's going along fine. And then suddenly these symptoms start to come on. And oftentimes they're not necessarily recognized as symptoms of menopause or perimenopause, rather, that the doctors don't even always put it all together. So there are a lot of women that are walking around with symptoms of perimenopause and don't even really recognize that they all come together and are all a cause of a hormone imbalance. So the other reason why we find this is to be tremendously important is that people are living longer. So back in 1900, the average lifespan was 47 years old. So if a woman did hit menopause, she was only experiencing it potentially for a few years. We certainly have a society now where people are continuing to work well past 50, obviously. So you have women potentially at the peak of their careers, or maybe they're continuing to peak, and suddenly they are hit with these symptoms that are impacting them. Again, 75% of women are having the hot flashes, 84% saying that it's impacting their ability. So imagine yourself working and everything's going along fine, and suddenly you're hit with a bunch of symptoms. You don't really recognize what those are, and you're worried about how they'll impact your work. So as an example, we're talking to one of the startups that we work with, and they were telling me a story about a woman who was at the peak of her career, an executive who had to publicly speak regularly. And she was absolutely terrified to get up and do any more public speaking for fear that she would be dripping in sweat. So this is a problem. And the other part of the problem is nobody knows exactly how it's going to hit them. Some women sail right through, others have multiple symptoms that will impact them. And the thing is, it goes much, much farther than these 6 simple symptoms I just said. There's actually up to 35 symptoms of menopause. And this is part of the problem. People don't recognize that there are all these potential symptoms. I'm not going to go through all of these for obvious reasons, but if you go to the Hackster Challenge page, there's a link to our site that we set up called hackingmenopause.com, and all of those symptoms are on there. So is this a niche thing? It is absolutely not a niche thing. There's approximately 52 million women that are in the age group, and 82 million women overall. If you look at the numbers, there are approximately 1 billion women worldwide currently going through menopause. This is 1 in 3 women. It's humongous. And if you start looking at the workforce, oops, sorry, let me click that. If you start looking at the workforce, 20% of the US workforce is currently in menopause. That's not 20% of women in the workforce, that's 20% of the whole workforce. So 1 in 5 workers is currently experiencing symptoms of menopause. The data that we've been able to extrapolate is that there are a lot of sick days that are taken as a result. 8% of women will leave their jobs because it's so debilitating for certain women. And if you look at the numbers that it typically costs to hire somebody, to recruit somebody, it's about $15,000 per person. That's a net hit on our economy of $37 billion a year. So it's a big problem, it's a big issue, and a big opportunity, which is why it's so exciting for us. Now you're probably saying there are solutions already though, right? There's hormone replacement therapy, and there absolutely is a great solution, hormone replacement therapy. However, only 6% of women are opting to utilize hormone replacement therapy, and there's a variety of reasons for that. It might be that they can't. It might be the cost, it's pretty costly. And it could also be that there's a lot of confusion surrounding hormone replacement therapy. There have been studies that have come out that have confused people about the physical correlations with it regarding heart disease, breast cancer. But speaking to the experts that I've been talking to at Johns Hopkins, really it's not as big of a risk as people might think. However, there's still just the national average is about 6% of women that are taking it. And that is the most effective way to reduce the symptoms, the hot flashes, the memory fog, all of that. So what do women do? If I don't want to do that, I don't really want to take those medicines, what else can I do? There are natural supplements, things like black cohosh is a popular one. There are cooling products out there. There are some cooling pajamas, there are fans, there's a little bit of tech in the cooling space, there's lubricants for the sex issue. And there's also other pharmaceuticals. Some women, for example, might opt to take a sleep aid or a mood aid to combat a specific symptom, but it doesn't actually target the overall hormonal imbalance. So there are things for people to use. What seems to be happening when we talk to people is they're kind of cobbling things together. So I might take the black cohosh over here, I might have a fan over here. My sister told me that she slept with a cooler next to her bed with ice packs in it because it got so bad. So people will figure out ways to solve it, but there's not really a good aggregated place for them to go and get solutions. And the other thing that's a little bit scary is that doctors are not necessarily well trained in this. It's, I want to say 1 in 5 gynecologists have appreciable training in menopause. And the overall amount of time spent in med school on this, and all of med school is 3 hours. And yet this is, again, a massive part of the population. And the cool thing is that, so what can women do, right? So we wanted to find out if they would be interested in a tech solution for solving the symptoms of menopause. And we found that 93% of menopausal women are interested in a tech solution, which is so exciting for us. So we recognize there was a humongous opportunity, big market, not a lot of options out there, and people very interested in tech. So this is where we think we could work together and come up with some fantastic ideas to help solve for these symptoms for women. Okay, so why are we doing this now, right? Look, menopause has been around for millennia, right? People have had menopause for a long time. But as I said earlier, this is the first time in history that we have such longevity. Women are not only living past their menopausal years, they are working through them. And I don't think I explained this before, but let me break this down just a little bit. The average age of menopause is 51. However, perimenopause, which is kind of the main event, is when all of these symptoms are coming on. This can start 4 years to 10 years prior to menopause. Menopause is just the point at which a woman hasn't had her period for 12 months. That's it. It's a day. It's a moment. Perimenopause is when all of these symptoms are happening. And again, 4 to 10 years of perimenopause. And then you got to ramp down, right? So after that, you're going to have another 4 years of the symptoms getting progressively less. However, other new symptoms are coming on, things like UTIs, yeast infections, osteoporosis, other things come on. So all in all, it could be anywhere from a 4 to a 20-year span that women are experiencing these symptoms. The other thing is that, look at this, guys. I mean, people are really starting to take notice. We know that FemTech is starting to grow. A lot of that's actually been more in the fertility space and the period space. Some really savvy engineers are beginning to look at menopause. It is truly a great frontier in the sense that there isn't a lot out there yet. And they're recognizing that there's an opportunity to really crack the market. It's very exciting. And FemTech is projected to be a $50 billion market by 2025. Hey, Rick, I'm going to pass it over to you because we're getting into the area of tech, and this is a great area of expertise for Rick, and I'm going to let you talk about these.
Yeah, so we have, I think my mic is still on. So there's a number of products out there, as Carrie pointed out, that are trying to address, again, specifically some of the symptoms of menopause, not the overall instance of menopause. And these include things like wearables that can be put strapped to your wrist, for instance, because that's a very sensitive point and it can cool you or warm you. And so there's a lot of different ways to address this problem, or these symptoms, I should say. And it doesn't have to be extremely high tech. It also doesn't have to be a physical object. We're open to all different kinds of solutions. Don't want to restrict it. I just wanted to point out that there are some companies out there already trying to attack this, but we're just at the very beginning of the wave. So there's a number of ways that we see solutions could come in. They could be digital, they could be physical, they could be services. We leave it to your imagination, quite frankly.
Also on the Hackster Challenge site, thank you, Rick. Also on the Hackster Challenge site, we have a list of idea starters as well. So you're welcome to look at those. Just even perusing menopause tech on the internet, you can come up with and see some other things that people are doing. There are things like cooling mattress pads, again, the digital coaches and symptom trackers, a lot around cooling. There's also Apollo Neuro, which is a device which helps people remain focused and reduce anxiety. There are some things around anxiety and panic, which are some of the symptoms. Insomnia is another big symptom. High-tech masks like Lumos, I believe, is one of them. It's really fun, actually, if you start digging in. There are some startups that are coming up with some really, really cool tech, and hopefully those will be a bit of an inspiration. When we jump to the challenge now, when we talk about the challenge, we are looking for people who maybe already have something that could be adapted. Our 3 category areas are dealer's choice. Pick one of those 35 symptoms I just showed you, and do you have something that addresses that? We have another category, which is innovation which solves for 2 or more symptoms. That would be particularly powerful. So that one is our highest prize, just because many of the solutions out there are going after just one. So if there's something out there that might actually tackle 2 at the same time, or 3 or 4, however many, that would be fantastic. And then we have the third one is a solution which can retail for under $50. One of the things that we've observed as we have done our research and looked around to see what's available is that a lot of these solutions are $200–300. that's what hormone replacement therapy also can cost monthly for people that don't have insurance, $200 a month. So we would really like to find some solutions, if we can, that a woman could pick up for $50 or under in a retail environment that could help her manage her day. So if you've got something that you think can be really cost effective and value engineered, we are certainly super open to hearing about that. The remaining 10 prizes are runners up, and they are $300 gift cards. We all can use money, and we want to make sure that we're recognizing people that have fantastic ideas. Again, all this information is on the Hackster website, which is here. I clicked my Chrome instead. There we go. All right, so sorry guys. I think I must have sorry about that. I think I've got a link directly on this page, so it's making me click forward, and what I'm trying to do is, there we go. So the challenge becomes, it doesn't have to be something that you are adapting. It can be something that's brand new, that's awesome, but you might already have something in your toolkit that is adaptable, that you could tweak a little bit, that might solve for some of these problems and some of these issues that women are having. So a great example of this, I mentioned this company earlier, Ember Labs. Ember Labs is a wearable bracelet, and I meant to put one on so I could show you, but you can kind of see it here in this artistic version of it. Ember Labs is a wearable bracelet that is a self-regulatory temperature control. And the cool thing about this is that this was created by a couple of guys who were working at MIT, and they were in the lab and they were cold. They were constantly cold in the basement lab of MIT. So they wanted to figure out a way to solve for that issue. And they learned that wave technology can actually help you hack your own personal thermostat. So they started by making this bracelet as something that could warm them up, and then they expanded upon it to make it something that could also cool down. And when we were talking to them, I think they were already starting to think about this, but my first question was, wait, can this help with hot flashes? And they said, yes, it can help with hot flashes. We've been working on that. And you know, they mentioned to me the story of the woman who was just terrified to get up and do any public speaking. She was an executive, very well along on her career, and she had to do a lot of public speaking. And she did not want to take hormone replacement therapy, but she was one of the women that had the very, very severe hot flashes, kind of the drippy, sweat, embarrassing hot flashes. So she was very stressed out, raising her anxiety about her career. What she found with the Ember bracelet is that she was able not to eliminate the hot flashes, because that's something probably more for hormone replacement, but she had control over them. No longer was she going to go up in front of a crowd worried in advance, which could also trigger the hot flash, by the way, that she was going to start breaking out in a sweat. So this device, by simply taking it, hacking it a little bit, adding the cooling component to it, now allows this woman to get up and continue her career, support her family, do the things that she wants to do without fear of it being interrupted by a hot flash. We believe there's probably other stuff out there that can be adapted in very much the same way. So with that, that is the presentation in terms of the basics of menopause 101. You all are versed now. And also what we're trying to do here with Hackster together to help solve women's issue of menopause, so and solve for the symptoms of menopause. So with that, I would like to open it up for questions, unless Rick or Sheila, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think you covered it pretty well, Carrie.
Thank you. Sheila, I'm going to take your silence as there you are. Okay, Katie, I think we can go to questions.
All right, sounds great. So we don't have too many questions. The one question we had was, what form does a submission need to be in? Does it need to be like an idea or fully formed?
I think it can run the spectrum of something that is a rough prototype. If it's something that's a hard good that you don't have a prototype for, but you've got a representation of it, whether it's in like UX Pin or something that illustrates what it is, I think that would be sufficient for us to look at. It may be a little bit detrimental versus somebody who's got something similar that is already further ahead in terms of development. But I wouldn't want somebody not to submit because they felt like it wasn't far enough along. So the answer is really just about anything. If you've got documentation that spells out and details what the product could be. I think that would be a fine submission as well.
Great, thanks. Another question we had was that in the list of symptoms, there was hormonal migraine was missing, so significantly worsening during perimenopause. Would you consider that for an option for something they could build a prototype for, or is that, since it's not listed, is that not an option?
That is perfectly fine. Yeah, I'd be very interested. I do know that probably was just an oversight on my part as I put everything in there. But yes, absolutely. Our perimenopausal migraines associated with hormonal fluctuations, absolutely. We'd love to see it.
Great. What kind of potential partnership with AARP does this challenge offer?
Do you want me to take that, Rick, or do you want to take that one?
It broke up. All I heard was the word partnership.
I can repeat. What kind of potential partnership with AARP does this challenge offer?
Yeah, you go ahead and take that, Carrie.
Okay, so the potential partnership is one where if we select your product, there's the opportunity. We'd have to obviously review and determine how much further we wanted to take it, but there's certainly the opportunity to come in and work with us. And we have, as Rick, I think, mentioned earlier, an accelerator program within AARP Innovation Labs where we work with startups every year. We have a cohort. So this would probably come in through that, and we would work together with them so that they could leverage the resources that we have. We have certainly a tremendous research machine at AARP, and we have people like Sheila and I and Rick who are product developers that the winner could work with to develop and build out a prototype potentially. Again, that could be taken to a conference later on, providing we're no longer social distancing. We don't know what's going to happen later on in the year, but we hope to be able to go to a conference, a health type conference later on in the year to be able to debut an MVP.
Yeah, I think that about covers it.
Okay.
Great. So there's been a lot of questions about like privacy around the ideas or prototypes that people are submitting. One of the questions is there licensing? Will there be licensing for the submitted code, or what types of protections are covering those ideas, if any?
Yeah, if you're talking about before the submission, I mean, those who are winners and those who we then also talk to about working with, we would work that out at the time. In advance of that, I think the content, if I'm not mistaken, is protected from the general public when it's submitted inside of Hackster. So there's no sort of licensing agreement in advance of any kind of a conclusion at the end of the Hackster challenge. I'm not sure if that's answering the question or not.
Yeah, and I can jump in a little bit on that. It's something that I don't know if you have discussed more with our contest team. I haven't been in those conversations, but typically what happens during a contest is that it is hidden during the contest, so no one else can take the idea or replicate the project. However, after the contest, those ideas and the projects are open to the website, so people can still go and see the project on the website. And that's something that we can discuss more and give you guys more details on what that might look like. If you have questions about that particular process and how that works, you can send us an email at help@hackster.io or contest@hackster.io, and I'll put that in the chat. And then we also have the discussion board as well. So any questions regarding that, we can help to answer on the discussion board as well as we discuss that more as well.
Yeah, the goal here is for us to help find great ideas and help bring them to market, or in some cases just help startups do it themselves. The goal here is not to gather a bunch of great ideas and then run off and build something ourselves. That's not going to happen. We want to partner and cooperate or just support startups to help solve or address some of the symptoms of menopause. So I just want to be clear there.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. And just underscore for people who may not be familiar with AARP, AARP is a social mission nonprofit organization. So our goal is helping people to choose how they live as they age through the lifespan. So really our primary objective at AARP is for social impact, to help people with particularly strong issues for them. So that's, as Rick said, our underlying goal is to get these ideas and help get them to market. And again, our goal is always around the anywhere where we can help people societally age.
Great, excellent, thank you. I had a question from someone who said, hardware applications or project entries, so this is contest rules, may not contain any of the following content. And in that it says content that is sexually explicit. However, if the project is related to libido loss and vaginal dryness, does that count? No, I think that's basically with Hackster. I'll answer that just because I know some of our rules on Hackster and what breaks those rules. So if it's specifically to address this contest and it is not, vulgar or in any way offensive, then it is not going to be a problem with our contest rules.
That's good. And that's also a medical condition, which I think separates it as well.
Yes.
Yep. We're not shying away from the sensitive topics. That's part of the point.
Great. Are submissions only open to companies based in the US?
We are looking far and wide for solutions, so it's open globally.
Excellent. Okay. A question about partnership again. Do the winners automatically get in line for getting their product or idea explored by AARP for partnership?
Yeah, I would say the winners automatically, I don't know about getting in line, but we do, it automatically gets them working with us to figure out whether this is something that makes sense for us to try to take to market or support them in taking to market. I wouldn't say the winners, it's not a guarantee that this product is then going to be turned around and taken to market next year. But it is our intention and our goal to try to do that. Obviously, it's not really helpful if a product is in a state where it, quote, wins our competition and then doesn't go anywhere. So it's not a guarantee, but it does put you, I guess you could say, to the front of the line.
Okay, and then a question said, when AARP is not bringing it to market, can we do it ourselves?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be the case. And there could be, I think there's a spectrum of outcomes, and one of them could be that we, AARP Innovation Labs, supports the creation of the product on behalf of the startup, and that could come in a variety of forms. One of them is the money you would win from winning the competition, and there's a potential for us to help support it in other ways down the road. So yeah.
Great, I think that's all we have for questions. Are there any more questions? If you have them, go ahead and type them in now. Otherwise, is there anything else that you guys wanted to touch upon based on some of the questions that you got that maybe triggered some other thoughts or?
I'm reading through them. Go ahead.
Well, I think we also have the ability for people to reach out to us with questions. Is that right? Or does that go straight to Hackster?
So again, I will put that into the chat column really quick here, but we have the ability to reach out to you guys on the discussion page. So if you go to the discussion, Rick and Carrie can kind of jump in there to help answer questions. If you have other places you'd like them to contact you at, we can give them that information. But otherwise, typically contests@Hackster.io. If you email that email address, we will be able to connect with someone at AARP to help answer that question.
Yeah, I guess my point is I know how my brain works. Sometimes I'll walk away from a webinar with a dozen questions that I forgot to ask. So I want people to make sure people have the ability to pass those along, or questions they weren't comfortable asking in a group chat. We certainly want to
Absolutely.
address that.
If you have any questions after this contest, and we do have a couple more that popped up here, so we'll go ahead and go with those, but you can email contest@Hackster.io, and I just put that in the chat window. So if you need to email us, we will be available there to help answer those questions. So yeah, we got a couple more pop up while we were chatting. One of the questions says, is there any possibility for extension of the deadline submission?
We haven't discussed that. Go ahead, Rick.
I don't know if there's any legal reason why we couldn't. We could think about that, given all that's going on in the world, particularly in the States right now. I think it's something we should talk about, Carrie.
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier this morning. So we'll discuss that offline. And I would say there's probably a good chance that we could extend it.
Yeah, the current deadline is April 12th, and we're definitely looking for the best solutions out there. So if extending it, will allow you all to create those solutions, I think that's definitely something for consideration.
Okay, great. If you cannot make the deadline, can you still contact AARP after the contest?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. However, the best opportunity to work with us at this point is through this challenge. So, but I wouldn't, we're not going to turn away anybody's outreach.
Great. One other question we had was, if I remember correctly, it was mentioned on the website that sponsors can and may use the ideas. So I think the question is, would you use the ideas without consent, or how does that work in terms of how you're going to be using those final projects?
Rick, feel free to jump in on this, but one of the reasons why we had that language in there is because we do have ideas that we're working on internally, and there might be the perception of, hey, I provided that idea, but it was something that we already had, and we didn't want to conflate those two things if we already had something that was in play. Rick, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think we'll be very upfront. If something comes through that is duplicative or very similar to what we're working on, I think it's something that we'd be responsible to to discuss that up front, so everybody is on the same page.
And as Rick said earlier, the idea is not just to take an idea and then go build it without working with the person or giving any kind of credit. That's just not how we operate.
No.
Great.
No, I mean, if we could, let's be blunt. If we could do that every time, we wouldn't be reaching out to the community of experts to help us build things. So we're looking to you in the Hackster audience to help us help the audience, frankly. So think of us as a catalyst, a conduit to the millions of women who are going through these symptoms. We don't have the ability to create all the solutions. So we're looking to you to help do that.
Awesome, thank you. I think, Rick, you may have answered this a little bit or touched on it briefly earlier, but there's a question if a working sample is more valued than an idea explanation.
Is a working, say it one more time?
Is a working sample more valued than an idea explanation?
Well, that's a philosophical question, isn't it? Generally speaking, if someone's got a working sample of something, it is, I wouldn't say it's more valued, but it certainly shows that there's, that more progress is something that is, indicates that we might weigh that a little bit more heavily. But I'm hesitating because I wouldn't want someone to think I've got a fantastic idea. I have an idea of how to actually execute it, but I can't because I don't have funding. I don't have support. I wouldn't want anybody to shy away from presenting that idea. And we may look at the two side by side and see a really interesting prototype for something that's kind of a meh idea. And something that's a spelled out idea that's really powerful, and we see a path to actually executing it, we would certainly then probably weight toward the one that's just an idea. A long way of answering. I'm trying to have it both ways. I apologize, but I don't want to squelch people who feel like I've got a great idea, but I don't have a prototype, I don't have a product, so therefore I'm not going to submit. We're going to take each one individually and focus on it that way and weigh them individually as much as we can.
In addition to that, I was going to say we are giving bonus points to anyone who can demonstrate their project by video.
Awesome. That's great. I think there's only one other question, and I can help answer this if you need, but can a submission be made and updated as more work is done?
Yeah, I mean, submission can be made. I think it could be updated all the way up to the point where the contest is closed. I think that's the way Hackster typically works. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. So you can submit it as early as you want. Typically, when you submit it, you can choose how you want your project to be. I think typically private or unlisted are the most common, and then you can update it up until the submission. Once you submit it and the submission deadline passes, and there's like I think a week or longer judging period, it depends on the contest, then you cannot make any updates during that judging period. So it's locked for any updates, and you actually couldn't go in and update it on our site even if you wanted to. Okay, I think that is all the questions that we have. There have been some questions throughout the chat as well about slides and the recording. So the slides will go out to all of you, so you can have those slides, specifically the ones on the menopause symptoms and all of that kind of good stuff. And then we will have the recording. As I mentioned at the beginning, Zoom has kind of been backlogged because of all of the people trying to use video and everything during this time. So the recording might take a little while to get, but it will, we will have that for you available at some point. And we'll send you all an email with the link to that once we have that available. So thank you so much for attending, everyone. Thank you, Carrie and Rick. I think Rick might have jumped off, but Sheila, thank you guys so much for everything.
Thank you for having us. We're really excited to see what you all come up with. We've got a few submissions already, or several actually, and we can't wait to potentially work with you.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Can't wait to see what you build.